The wounded sentinel the maintenance shaft reeked of ozone and forgotten dreams. Kira-chun wiped grease from her hands with a torn cloth, her toolkit scattered around the narrow corridor like metal confetti. Another broken atmospheric recycler, another 12-hour shift for barely enough credits to keep her tiny apartment powered. In Neo-Tokyo skyrise, humans like her kept the massive vertical city breathing while aliens enjoyed the crystalline towers that pierced the clouds above. Pip, her bio-companion, suddenly froze against her shoulder. The small creature's bioluminescent patches flickered from soft blue to alarmed amber, casting dancing shadows on the corrugated walls. Something was wrong. "What is it, buddy?" Kiara whispered, following Pip's gaze deeper into the maintenance tunnel. The sound came first, a low, harmonic resonance that seemed to vibrate through her bones. Then she saw him. The being was massive, easily 8 feet tall, his body formed from what looked like living crystal. Geometric patterns flowed beneath his translucent skin like captured lightning, but they were dim, flickering weakly. He was collapsed against the tunnel wall, his usually brilliant form dulled to the color of winter fog. Kira had seen his kind before, the Guardians. They were legends among the alien upper castes, beings of immense power who supposedly protected the dimensional barriers between worlds. But this one looked anything but powerful. His crystal matrix was spider-webbed with cracks, and his breathing came in labored, musical whispers. She should have walked away. Everyone knew better than to interfere with alien affairs. But when his eyes opened, swirling galaxies of silver and blue, and fixed on her with such confusion and pain, her heart lurched. "Hey," she said softly, approaching with hands visible. "You're hurt." The Guardian tried to speak, but only harmonic fragments emerged, like a broken orchestra trying to find its rhythm. His massive form shuddered as he attempted to rise, then collapsed again with a sound like crystal chimes falling. Pip chittered nervously, but didn't flee. Instead, the little creature's patches shifted to a warm, comforting gold, the same color it used when Kira had nightmares about her parents' accident. "I'm Kira," she said, crouching just out of reach. "This is Pip. We're not going to hurt you." The Guardian's gaze moved between them, and something in his expression softened. When Kira offered her water bottle, he accepted it with surprising gentleness, his crystalline fingers barely grazing hers. The brief contact sent a shock of warmth through her, like touching starlight. Around them, the city hummed with the movement of millions of beings, but none ventured into the forgotten maintenance areas where humans worked. None would stop for a fallen Guardian, not when it might mean questions from the authorities. "Come on," Kira said, making a decision that would change everything. "Let's get you somewhere safe. Fragments of Memory DR." Elena Voss's laboratory occupied a forgotten corner of the mid-tier medical district, where alien refugees and humans with questionable documentation could receive treatment without excessive paperwork. The tall, gray-skinned Arcturian physician had built her reputation on discretion and genuine care, traits that made her invaluable to beings like Kira. "You brought me a Guardian," Elena said simply, her large dark eyes reflecting concern rather than fear, as she examined Zephyr's cracked crystal matrix. A broken one, Zephyr lay on the reinforced medical table, his form pulsing weakly with internal light. The harmonic sounds he made were softer now, almost musical, like wind through crystal caves. Pip had claimed a perch on a nearby shelf, watching protectively. "Can you help him?" Kira asked, surprised by how much the answer mattered to her. Elena's scanner hummed as it passed over Zephyr's body. "His neural crystalline structure is fractured. Imagine trying to remember your life through a shattered mirror. Fragments exist, but the whole picture is lost." As if summoned by her words, Zephyr's eyes opened. For a moment, they blazed with ancient light, and he spoke in a voice like distant thunder. "The rifts. The void hunters ... I must ... double quotes," Then the light faded, and confusion returned. Rifts? Kira leaned closer, drawn by the pain in his expression. What rifts? Elena's scanner beeped urgently. According to this, he was once incredibly powerful. These readings suggest he could manipulate dimensional barriers, bend space itself. But something drained him almost completely. The laboratory door chimed, and Marcus Reed stepped inside, his security uniform crisp despite the late hour. Kara's childhood friend had grown broader and more serious since joining Prometheus Corp's security division, but his eyes still held warmth when he looked at her. Kira, what the hell are you doing? Marcus's voice carried worry and frustration in equal measure. The entire upper city is buzzing about a missing guardian. Prometheus has contracts with 3 different alien governments looking for him. He's not missing, Kira said firmly. He's hurt. Marcus studied Zephyr's prone form, then Elena's readings. Jesus, Kira. You know what this means? Guardians are living weapons. If Prometheus finds out you're harboring him, then we make sure they don't find out. Kira moved, protectively closer to the table, her hand almost touching Zephyr's crystalline shoulder. Zephyr's eyes focused on her movement, and his breathing seemed to steady. The cracks in his form pulsed with a slightly brighter light, as if her presence somehow strengthened him. Elena noticed the correlation on her monitors. Fascinating, the doctor murmured. His biorhythms stabilize when you're near. There might be some kind of empathic resonance. Empathic what? Guardians were designed to be solitary beings, Elena explained. They draw power from isolation, from disconnection from others. But perhaps that's why he's struggling to heal. He needs connection, not isolation. Marcus stepped closer, his expression serious. Kira, listen to me. Prometheus is mobilizing hunter squads. Whatever happened to him, there are people who want him back. And they're not planning to ask nicely. As if responding to the threat, Zephyr's form flickered more brightly. His eyes met Kira's, and in that gaze she saw not just confusion, but a growing recognition. When he spoke, his voice was clearer, touched with an accent that suggested vast distances and ancient places. Kira, he said her name like a prayer. You stayed. The simple words hit her harder than they should have. In his tone was wonder, as if kindness was something he'd forgotten existed. Without thinking, she reached out and touched his crystalline hand. The contact sent warmth racing through both of them, and the monitoring equipment registered a significant spike in his energy levels. We need to move him, Elena said quietly. Somewhere safe, away from Prometheus scanners. I know a place, Kira said, though she wasn't sure why she was risking everything for someone she just met. But when Zephyr's fingers closed gently around hers, crystalline and warm and surprisingly human in their need for connection, she knew she'd made the right choice. The hunt begins. The abandoned subway tunnels beneath Neo-Tokyo skyrise hadn't seen trains in 50 years, but they still hummed with forgotten power. Old Sam had made these depths his kingdom, a grizzled human engineer who'd worked the city's bones since before the aliens arrived. His workshop was a maze of salvage technology and makeshift comfort, hidden from corporate scanners by layers of interference shielding. So you're the guardian everyone's hunting, Sam said, studying Zephyr with knowing eyes. Thought you looked familiar. Saw you once, maybe 30 years ago, sealing a rift that opened near the industrial sector. Saved half the city that day. Zephyr sat on a reinforced crate, his crystalline form casting prismatic light across the tunnel walls. His memories were returning in fragments, flashes of interdimensional battles, ancient responsibilities, the weight of protecting reality itself. But clearer than any of those distant recollections was the warmth of Kira's hand in his, the way she looked at him without fear. The Prometheus hunters found Elena's clinic, Marcus reported breathlessly as he dropped through the tunnel entrance. They tore the place apart. Elena's safe. She had time to activate her emergency protocols, but they know he was there. Kira paced the narrow space, Pip clinging to her shoulder with worried amber light. How long before they find us here? Commander Thane is leading the search personally, Marcus continued. He's got authorization from 3 alien governments and Prometheus backing. They want Zephyr for his Guardian protocols, the knowledge of how to manipulate dimensional barriers. And the Shadow Syndicate wants his crystal core, Sam added grimly. Black market buyers pay fortunes for Guardian essence. They think they can synthesize it, create artificial guardians for the highest bidder. Zephyr's form flickered with distress. I cannot remember the seals. The knowledge is fragmented. If they capture me now, they could break the remaining barriers by accident. What barriers? Kira asked, moving to sit beside him. The simple proximity made his light stabilize again, a phenomenon that no longer surprised any of them. Between dimensions, Zephyr's voice grew distant, touched with ancient fear. There are things in the void between worlds. Hungry things. The Guardians were created to keep them from finding populated space. The tunnel suddenly filled with the sound of approaching boots. Sam's early warning sensors chimed urgently as armed figures descended from multiple access points. Commander Thane's voice echoed through an amplifier. Guardian Zephyr, you will surrender yourself for processing. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. This way, Sam hissed, leading them deeper into the tunnel system. Maintenance shafts connect to the old geothermal plants. They won't follow us into the heat zones. As they ran through the winding passages, Zephyr struggled to keep pace. His power was still fractured, his crystalline form heavy and unresponsive. When he stumbled, Kira immediately supported him, her arms around his torso, her warmth seeping through his crystal skin. I'm slowing you down, he said, his voice tight with frustration. We're not leaving you, Kira replied firmly. In the dim tunnel light, their faces were close enough that she could see her reflection in his faceted eyes. We're in this together. Something passed between them in that moment. Not just determination, but a recognition of deeper connection. When pursuit sounds grew closer, Zephyr pulled her into an alcove, his body shielding hers from view. The proximity was electric, her human warmth against his crystalline coolness, her breath on his throat making his entire form resonate with harmonics he'd never experienced. Kira, he whispered, and her name on his lips carried weight beyond words. She looked up at him, seeing past the alien features to the being beneath. Powerful yet vulnerable, ancient yet somehow innocent in matters of the heart. When she reached up to touch his face, tracing the geometric patterns beneath his skin, he leaned into the contact like he was starving for it. Later, she promised softly, understanding passing between them. When this is over, we'll figure out what this is. The sound of boots grew fainter as the hunters moved past their hiding spot. But both Kira and Zephyr knew that running could only work for so long. Eventually, they would have to face what was hunting them and discover what Zephyr was truly capable of when he had something worth protecting. The Guardian's purpose, the ancient oracle, lived in the spaces between spaces, in a pocket dimension accessible only through the deepest meditation chambers of the old city. Her form was barely corporeal, shifting mist and starlight held together by will older than civilizations. When Kira, Zephyr, and their companions arrived at her sanctuary, reality itself seemed to bend around them. The broken guardian seeks wholeness. The oracle's voice was like cosmic wind through crystal caves. But wholeness comes with a price. Zephyr knelt before the ancient being, his fractured form casting prismatic shadows on walls that showed glimpses of other dimensions. I remember fragments. A great sacrifice. Dimensional barriers failing. What did I do? You chose love over duty, the oracle replied, her attention shifting to Kira. 67 cycles ago, a rift opened that would have consumed this sector. To seal it, You sacrificed your connection to the Guardian Collective, becoming mortal, vulnerable. You saved millions, but lost yourself. Helena's scanner detected massive energy fluctuations around them. The dimensional fabric here is unstable. Something's weakening the barriers. Because his sacrifice is failing, the Oracle confirmed. The seal was meant to be permanent, but it was powered by his willing isolation from all emotional bonds. Now that he has found connection again, ... she gestured toward Kira. The seal weakens. As if summoned by her words, reality flickered. Through the translucent walls, shapes moved in the void between dimensions. Things with too many angles, hunger given form, void creatures pressing against the weakening barriers. Then he has to choose again, Kira said quietly, understanding hitting her like ice water. Isolation to maintain the seal, or ... double quotes, or we find another way, Zephyr said firmly, rising to face the Oracle. There must be another way. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of pursuit. Commander Thane's forces had tracked them even here, and Marcus's communication device crackled with urgent warnings about syndicate ships surrounding the old city. There is one possibility, the Oracle admitted. Guardians were designed to draw power from isolation because emotion was considered a weakness. But perhaps emotion could become strength. The bond between you and the human creates unprecedented resonance patterns. Zephyr turned to Kira, his eyes blazing with returning memory and desperate hope. It would mean risking everything. If it fails, both the seal and our connection could be destroyed. And if we don't try, Kira replied, stepping closer to him, everything gets destroyed anyway. The sound of weapons fire echoed from the outer chambers. Thane's voice boomed through amplifiers. Surrender the Guardian. The syndicate vessels are in position. You have nowhere to run. But Kira wasn't thinking about running anymore. She was thinking about the way Zephyr's light stabilized when she touched him, the way their connection seemed to transcend species and circumstance. She was thinking about love as a force of nature, not a weakness. Show me, she said to the Oracle. Show me how to help him. The ancient being gestured, and suddenly Kira could see the energy patterns flowing between her and Zephyr, streams of light connecting their hearts, their minds, their very essence. But she could also see the massive rift hidden behind dimensional layers, held closed by power that was rapidly failing. It will require complete trust, the Oracle warned. Complete vulnerability. Both of you must be willing to merge, not just your energies, but your souls. Zephyr reached for Kira's hands, his crystalline fingers intertwining with her human ones. Kira, I cannot ask you to risk. You're not asking, she interrupted, pulling him closer until their foreheads touched. I'm choosing. Just like you chose to save the city. Just like you chose to trust me in that maintenance tunnel. Around them, reality continued to fracture as void creatures pressed against the weakening barriers. But in the space between heartbeats, between breaths, Kira and Zephyr found something that transcended dimensional physics. When their lips met, the kiss was soft at first, tentative, then deeper as understanding flooded through them both. Power flowed between them like liquid starlight. Not the cold, isolated strength of the old guardians, but something warm and alive and infinitely renewable. Kira felt her consciousness expand, touching the vast loneliness Zephyr had carried for decades, while he experienced her fierce compassion, her stubborn hope in the face of impossible odds. Now, the Oracle whispered, while the connection is strongest, seal the rift with shared strength instead of willing sacrifice. Together, they turned toward the dimensional barrier, their combined will reaching across space toward the ancient seal. And for the first time in his existence, Zephyr understood that Guardians had been designed wrong from the beginning. Isolation wasn't strength. Connection was. Rise of the new Guardian reality tore open like fabric under impossible strain. The dimensional rift erupted through the Oracle's sanctuary, spilling void creatures into normal space, writhing shadows with crystalline teeth that devoured light itself. The ancient seal, powered by Zephyr's original sacrifice, finally shattered completely. Commander Thane's assault forces poured into the chamber just as the first Void Hunter materialized, its impossible geometry hurting to look at directly. The Syndicate's energy weapons proved useless against creatures that existed partially outside normal physics. "Fall back," Thane shouted, his military training warring with the primal terror of facing interdimensional predators. "All units fall back." But there was nowhere to run. The void creatures multiplied as they fed on the fear and chaos, their hunger spreading like infection through the dimensional barriers protecting Neo-Tokyo skyrise. Zephyr stood at the center of the maelstrom, his crystalline form blazing with power drawn from his connection to Kira. But even with their shared strength, he was still weakened from decades of isolation, still fractured from his original sacrifice. "I cannot hold them all," he said through gritted teeth, geometric light patterns racing across his skin as he struggled to contain the interdimensional breach. That's when Elena stepped forward, her medical scanner reconfigured into an energy projector. "Then don't hold them alone." Marcus raised his weapon, not at Zephyr, but at the void creatures threatening everyone in the chamber. "Guess it's time to pick a side." Old Sam emerged from behind a fallen pillar, his engineering tools humming with improvised modifications. "Been waiting 60 years to see Guardians done right." Even Commander Thane, faced with the reality of what the void creatures represented, turned his forces toward the real enemy. "All units, protect the Guardian." Repeat, protect the Guardian. But it was Lieutenant Zara who surprised everyone most. The tall, blue-skinned Zealonian stepped away from Thane's formation and moved toward Zephyr and Kira. "The collective memory of my people speaks of the old wars," she said formally, "when Guardians stood alone and fell one by one. Perhaps it is time for a new way." The Oracle's voice drifted through the chaos. "Connection, Guardian. Not just with the human, but with all who choose to stand with you." Kira understood first. She reached out to Elena, grasping the Arcturian's long-fingered hand. Elena, in turn, connected with Marcus, who grabbed Sam's weathered grip. One by one, a chain of connection formed, human and alien, corporate and criminal, all united by the simple choice to stand against the darkness. Power flowed through their joined hands like liquid lightning, not the cold, dimensionally focused energy of the old Guardians, but something warm and alive and infinitely adaptable. Zephyr felt it washing through him, healing the fractures in his crystal matrix, restoring memories not of isolation and duty, but of the living beings he had chosen to protect. The void creatures hesitated, confused by this new type of Guardian energy. They had been designed to feed on fear and isolation, but this power drew strength from hope and connection. "Now," Kira whispered, and Zephyr unleashed everything they had built together. Light erupted from their joined circle, not the harsh brilliance of a weapon, but the warm radiance of a sunrise. It washed over the void creatures, and instead of destroying them, it offered them something they had never experienced: the possibility of connection instead of hunger, of belonging instead of consumption. One by one, the interdimensional predators stopped their attack. Some simply faded back to their own dimension, satisfied. Others lingered, drawn by the unfamiliar sensation of communion, no longer purely predatory. The dimensional rift began to seal itself, not through forced barriers, but through a new kind of stability, one maintained by willing cooperation instead of sacrificial isolation. When the light faded, Zephyr's crystalline form had changed. The geometric patterns beneath his skin now pulsed with warm colors that reflected the emotions of those connected to him. He was still clearly a Guardian, but no longer alone. The Unified Council will need to know about this. Thane said quietly, his military bearing softened by what he had witnessed. About the new Guardian protocols. Guardians plural, Kira corrected, still holding Zephyr's hand as their connection settled into something sustainable and beautiful. This works because it's not just about one being sacrificing everything. It's about everyone choosing to be part of the solution. 6 months later, the new Guardian network stretched across multiple star systems. Beings of dozens of species had learned to form connection circles, creating flexible, living barriers against interdimensional threats. The old fortresses where Guardians had lived in isolation were converted into community centers where different species learned to understand each other. Zephyr and Kira made their home in a converted observation tower, where the crystal gardens they tended together could be seen from both the upper city and the lower districts. Pip had become something of a celebrity, the first registered ambassador between biocompanions and Guardian networks. On quiet evenings, when the artificial stars dimmed to simulate night, they would stand on their balcony and watch the city breathe below them. Beings who had once lived in rigid castes now moved freely between levels, drawn together by the understanding that connection made everyone stronger. "Do you ever miss it?" Kira asked one such evening, watching the prismatic light play across Zephyr's features. The old way, when Guardians were considered gods? Zephyr wrapped his arms around her, his crystalline warmth matching her human heat. "Gods are worshipped from a distance," he said softly. "I prefer being loved up close." In the distance, another Guardian circle was forming to address a minor dimensional fluctuation. But unlike the old days, they faced it together, connected and absolutely unafraid.